Welcome to Growing Belleville Through Community Chats, a podcast presented by the Greater Belleville Chamber of Commerce to help highlight, promote, and enlighten people, businesses, and community events in the Greater Belleville area. Here are your hosts, Stephen Sedlak and Eric Huber.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Growing Belleville Through Community Chats. I'm your co-host, Stephen Sedlak, along with Eric Huber. How are you, Eric?
I'm doing well, Stephen. How are you?
We're getting there. The clocks have changed. The sun's staying out longer, man. It's a beautiful time of the year.
Yeah, you couldn't really tell it this past weekend. I think I'm still kind of thawing out from the wind and cold, but hopefully that'll change here soon.
Yeah, there's light at the end of the tunnel. So anyway, we have our guest, Heather Freed from Big Brothers Big Sisters with us today. How are you, Heather?
Doing great. Thank you guys for having me. I feel so official.
Well, don't get too excited about that. It's just us here. nothing massive, but we do appreciate you coming on. Why don't you kind of give everybody a little background of yourself that might not be familiar with you?
Sure. Well, I am Heather Freed. As you said, I'm the president and CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Southwestern Illinois. I am a licensed clinical social worker, so that means I've been trained to work in social systems and to address, social problems and kind of a macro and a micro level. I used to do clinical work, but I don't anymore. I've spent my whole career working with kids. So starting, 15, 17 years ago, way back then, I've worked in, youth centers. I've worked with counseling with youth. Prior to this, I actually worked in a lot of youth suicide prevention work. So to say that kids are my passion would be an understatement. I think, really they're our future. And to the extent we invest in kids and their health and well-being is the extent that our community thrives for years and years to come. And so when the opportunity came about to work at Big Brothers Big Sisters, I jumped on it. At the time, I was living in Chicago with my husband and my, at that time, 1.5-year-old son. I had been living up there for about 17 years and was ready to move back to the community. My dad's a retired police chief in Madison County, and my whole family lives in the Metro East. So we were looking to move back and be closer to home. And, Big Brothers Big Sisters is the type of organization that when you have an opportunity to work for them, you jump on it because it's just a staple in the nonprofit world with such a phenomenal reputation. And it hasn't disappointed so far. So. Well,
good. No, and I think, what you guys do is phenomenal overall. I think it's an incredible organization. And it's that staple, like you said, it's that nonprofit. There's a few that just come top of mind when you think of those types of things. And of course, Big Brothers Big Sisters is one of them. But how, I guess, and we've kind of had this conversation with other people on the show, but I'm always kind of curious to see other people's responses on it as well, too. But how did COVID and everything when it was at its height, affect you guys? Was it, because you're dealing with people, non-family members, dealing with each other. I don't know. I'm just kind of curious how you guys trenched through it.
Yeah, I always ask those same questions too. I feel like we went through a major, and I'm talking about just as a society, we went through a major moment as a society culturally. And so I'm always fascinated by that too. But, it was tough. I mean, I think we were able to kind of get through it. I think there were some things that we had, unintentionally set ourselves up for that ended up working out okay. Like, for example, prior to COVID, we had already started experimenting with remote work, and we were experimenting with doing a lot of our enrollment over, digital platforms. So that part was the easy part. I think the more challenging part was are people going to want to continue to donate? How long is this going to last? In the early days, we're in the business of relationships, and at the core of what we do, which I'd love to get into today, we really are about driving volunteers into our organization. Without volunteer mentors, we can't exist, right? I mean, we have these kids who enroll and these families enroll to give their kids an opportunity to have exposure to healthy, positive adults and spend time with those adults. And when you're in an environment where we're being told to stay home and to reduce the amount of interactions you're having, and eventually we were able to go out and wear masks, and there was a little bit more guidance on what we could and could not do. But there was a period of time where it was like, we're in the business of interaction and in relationships in Houston. Right. There's a problem here. Like, we need to figure this out. So we did loosen up some of our guidelines prior to COVID. We really didn't encourage a lot of our matches to engage online. It's just not quite the same, but we did allow that to happen. And for some matches, it worked out really well. I think it provides a great supplement, and we'll continue to supplement, match relationships with the virtual piece. But we are we've very much enjoyed being back to having our matches engage in person.
I'm sure.
Go out to parks and movies and restaurants and explore the community. And that's what we live for. So
how do you, as I think not just you guys, right, with the recruitment aspect of getting people to volunteer, is it harder now than it was? I'm just thinking, does that correlate with how the job market is? Because, right, it's really hard recruiting wise to get good employees right now, just industry, just everywhere. I didn't know. Is that something that's very similar for you guys? Is it harder now? I mean, what are you guys kind of doing to drive that?
It is. I feel like it is. In fact, we even were like having an internal discussion at Big Brothers Big Sisters about whether or not we should even use the term recruitment, because that's so loaded for employers. They think recruitment and they think, wow, I'm trying to recruit my own employees, even though we're doing a totally different type of recruitment. But I think it has been tough. And it's, I think at this point, most of us have sort of moved on with our lives. I think those of us who are healthy enough to be and lucky enough to be in good health to be able to just kind of go about life normally, that isn't so much a concern anymore. I think the biggest barrier we are finding with getting enough volunteers to come into the organization is because so many of us have gone through major life changes. And so one of the things we look at when we're enrolling new volunteers is we really want to kind of make sure that their life is in a pretty stable place, because when we're taking the time to match you with a child who has had a lot of transition in their life and who have had adults come in and out of their life, we take our role very seriously of putting an adult in their life who's going to be there at least for 12 months, if not longer. And so when we're interviewing volunteers, we'll ask, have you gotten married in the last 6 months? Have you had a child in the last 6 months? Have you changed your job in the last 6 months? And, a lot of people have had a lot of major life transitions happen in the last 2 years. And so, that's something we're kind of, we're working through. But I think, the last couple of months have been I've felt very hopeful, because I'm starting to see people, I'm starting to see us kind of get past a lot of the barriers we were seeing before. And I'm seeing a new enthusiasm people have to kind of get out and meet new people and volunteer in their community. And that's been really encouraging for us.
Heather, as far as the volunteers, someone who's listening right now, if they're unfamiliar with the Big Brothers Big Sisters process, how can you go out there, research, see what's all involved? You guys have different seminars, just what's out there informational wise for someone to kind of start looking at and see if it is something for them to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So we offer, there's a couple of different ways many different ways to learn more. And I probably should share a little bit of history of Big Brothers Big Sisters, because I kind of glazed over that. But so if you're interested in learning more about what is all involved, our website's a great place to start. We have a lot of helpful information to help people kind of think through whether it's a good opportunity for them. And I can talk a little bit about that too. We also have information sessions we offer weekly. So we usually offer an evening session and a daytime session for people to pop on and learn a little bit. And then of course you can always set up a one-on-one call with one of our staff members. So lots of different ways to get involved, or learn about how to get involved. But a couple of things to kind of keep in mind. When we talk about volunteers, what we're talking about is an adult volunteer. So someone who's over the age of 18. We match adults with children within their own community. So we serve St. Clair, Madison, Clinton, and Monroe counties. And when we're doing the matching, we look to match that adult with a child within like a 25-minute drive. So we try to keep the proximity pretty close. So with that being said, when we're looking at volunteers, we need them to have a valid driver's license and driver's insurance. Because the idea is that once you're matched with your little, you'll be doing stuff. You'll be picking them up from their house. You'll be taking them to Sky Zone, taking them to the movies, going out, to eat. It's really about doing things you'd normally do, except doing it with a little person, that you're hanging out with. And, I think a lot of times when people are thinking about ways to get involved in the community, they may have heard of us, they may have not heard of us, but I always find once I start talking to people about mentoring a child, we'll hear things like, well, I'm too old to mentor a child. I'm retired and I don't want to be a big grandparent, or they don't want a big grandparent. And that is a total myth. Some of our best volunteers are retired. They're adults with adult children, or, maybe in the later stage of their career or in a stable place in their career. And a lot of that's because they have more time, they've got more resources, they have more connections. I think the older you get, the more life experience you have more to offer. And you take commitments very seriously for the most part. And so some of our best volunteers are older adults, but we do also match our youth with, college students and, young people with young families and things like that. We also hear oftentimes, I don't feel like I should be mentoring a child. Like, who am I to mentor someone? I don't have all of these accolades. I'm not a leader in my organization. And really to that, that's not necessarily what we're looking for. We're looking for people who, of course, enjoy children, of course, have time to give. We do ask for 4 hours a month for a minimum of 12 months, but we're looking for consistency and someone who's just positive. If you've graduated high school, if you're in the military, if you, have a family, don't have a family, it really doesn't matter. It's more about being there for that child. It's listening. It's encouraging them to try new things. And it's as simple as that. I think we overcomplicate these things in our heads a lot of time.
While you're saying that, something came to my memory that I hadn't thought about for a while, but there was a movie, about maybe 12, 13 years ago with Paul Rudd and Role Models. That was it. I just kept thinking about that movie, and I don't know why it just came in my head, but I just want to throw it out there. So I'm assuming it's nothing a lot like that, just maybe more family-oriented type of things doing.
I haven't seen Role Models, but I'm a Paul Rudd fan, so I can only imagine what that is all about. So I'll just go ahead and say no. It's probably not.
Well, good. It wasn't too bad, but no, it's a good flick. My wife always gets a kick out of it when it's on TV. So
yeah, but I mean, I think and we've had a long history with this community, and so I find that people either who are from the community either have like a lot of experience with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and as soon as I mention Big Brothers Big Sisters, they're sharing stories about being big in the 80s and the 90s, or talking about Barb Cempura, our founder, who's still in the community doing amazing things, or or they've never heard of us. So I find it's either one or the other. And so just a little bit about our history, just so people understand. We've been in the community about 42 years, I think now. Over that time, we've served thousands and thousands of children, and have made a huge difference in a lot of kids' lives. We we got started. So Big Brothers Big Sisters is a part of a national federation. There's about 250 of us around the country, and we're an affiliate of the largest, oldest, and most respected mentoring organization in the country. Big Brothers Big Sisters of America, I think a couple years ago, was even voted like one of the most trusted nonprofits. I mean, we've really been around the block, you know. So, and what a lot of people don't know too about our organization is we got started as a creative solution to juvenile justice. So, you know, way back then, you know, in the early, 1900s, when, you know, Big Brothers Big Sisters was getting started, you know, there were kids who were getting sent to the court system. They were getting tried for crimes, and it was a lot of the same kids who were getting in trouble time and time again. And what they realized was that a lot of these kids didn't have enough positive role models. Many of them didn't have dads. A lot of them were boys. And so, you know, when we think of Big Brothers Big Sisters, we think of all kinds of things. But sometimes what we don't remember, or what we don't know, is that this really started as sort of like a juvenile crime prevention program, and it's grown into so much more. I mean, now we've had third-party people do research on the program, and we collect our own outcome measures as well. And you know, this program is about keeping kids in school. Like over 90% of our kids last year had an improvement in their grades. All of our eligible seniors the last 2 years have graduated high school. This program is also incredible for improving relationships. 100% of our kids last year had improved relationships with adults in their lives. So not only were they having these great relationships with their mentors, but their relationships with their teachers and their parents were improving. We've started recently even measuring how kids are doing from a social emotional point of view and their mental health. This program was never really designed to improve mental health, but we've started collecting that information. And over the last couple of years, about 67% of our kids have had improvement in their ability to manage negative emotions and reduce depressive symptoms, which is pretty amazing that just hanging out with another positive adult, you'd actually have an impact that's similar to what you'd expect in therapy. You know what I mean? I mean, if you had those types of outcomes in therapy, that would be a success, right? And we're seeing it in the mentorship program. And, you know, the list goes on and on. So, you know, although we got started as a way to keep kids out of trouble and to keep them out of jail, and we're still doing that, the program does so much more for kids who are sort of on the fringes. And that's really, you know, where we think we make a big difference. It's for kids who, you know, have not had the best luck, have not started off life in that really prime starting block, but instead are starting like 5, 10, 20 paces behind other kids. We can help kind of catch them up and change the trajectory of where their life is headed. And that's a pretty cool thing. So
I want to go back for a second to, you mentioned Barb earlier and how important she is to the organization and has been, and in the community. I mean, she's a wonderful lady. With her being the founder of it, being involved with it for so long, and now things have changed a little bit. Does she still have a big impact there? She's still around a lot. What's her kind of influence on everything now?
I mean, I think Barb will always have an impact, on the organization and the mission. As you mentioned, Barb was our founder. So I think 1980 is when our affiliate office got founded. And we had sort of a similar founding story as the Big Brothers Big Sisters of America. There were a group of social workers here in Belleville, teachers and social workers who were seeing the same kids getting in trouble time and time again. And they were kids without a lot of positive influence at home. And Barb was right there, as one of those founding people trying to come up with solutions. And when Big Brothers Big Sisters was, identified as a really great solution for our community, she's been there every step of the way. And she actually trained me. So I feel like I got, a little bit of Barb is sort of in me and sort of how I think about things. I mean, I certainly bring my own flair and my own personality and experience to the organization. But, certainly the story she shared, the connections she's made. I mean, there's not a day that goes by I don't interact with the donor or, someone affiliated with the program who asks me about Barb. And so I think she'll always be a part of this organization. And in the early days, when I first got started with Big Brothers Big Sisters, I'm now in my third year. I was calling her a lot. We were going to a lot of lunches, and slowly, you know, she's started to kind of give me space to kind of do things my way. And, you know, I think she's enjoying now kind of watching things from afar. And, you know, I hope she's happy at the fact that we're doing things different and we're moving in a little bit of a different direction, but the spirit of what she started is still very much here and thriving.
And she's still very much involved in the community herself anyway. Yes. So good. Yes.
Heather, I want to go back because like you mentioned, I mean, a kid in that atmosphere, having someone stable, just that person to look up to, I'm sure it's life-changing for these kids. Do you see a lot of kids that were in Big Brothers Big Sister end up being kind of a mentor or volunteer later in life because of the impact that it had on their lives?
We do see that from time to time. You know, I don't know that it's the overwhelming, you know, it's an overwhelming phenomenon we see, but we do see it. And when we do see it, it's really, really cool. You know, we're definitely now at the stage where a lot of the kids who were involved in the program, you know, in the 90s and beyond are starting to get to that age where they can really be thinking about making that type of commitment. And it's a powerful thing when they decide to give back. So, yeah.
Cool.
What other aspects, you know, of course, the volunteer and recruiting volunteers for that and being the bigs, but, you know, you guys do raffles. You do other events throughout the year as well, too. What you want to highlight some of those as well? Because I know there's some pretty big ones and some nice ones that you guys do.
Yeah. So, you know, if you're looking to get involved in a different way, I mean, asking someone to volunteer and commit to 4 to 12 hours a month isn't for everybody, right? We're all in different places in our lives and have different things we're interested in. But coming up here shortly, so on June 9th, we're having our Trivia for Kids' Sake event. Historically, we used to do an event called Bowl for Kids' Sake. And so it works similar. We get teams together of 5 to 8. Those people raise $100 each. And then part of the celebration of that fundraising is you get to attend a fun event. So historically, we used to do bowling. After COVID, we were looking for things to do outside. And so this will be the second year we're hosting a trivia event at GCS. So we're doing it at the ballpark. We did it there last year. It was really fun. We're going to put tables on the field. We'll have a professional trivia host on the Jumbotron. We'll be serving beer, ballpark snacks. So it's trivia, but it's sort of, you know, we're paying homage to the fact that we're at the ballpark. And everyone does trivia. It's familiar to everyone.
Right.
But it's our way of making it fun and making it different. So
that sounds right up your alley, Eric.
Yeah, I was just going to say the Bowl for Kids' Sake, it was nice because we always did the Battle of the Banks, and all the banks was like phase one of the bowling aspect. So all the banks bowled against each other, and it was always a good time. I think we got a bowling pin trophy sitting at Bank of Springfield too from one of the years.
Yeah. Did you contribute to that, Eric?
Yeah.
Good.
Either to the bowling or the bucket of beers that we bought it.
Either or.
You know, the history of that event, and that's still very much the case. Like, it's a great way to get colleagues together. I think, you know, even as a leader myself, like, I'm always thinking of ways, like, how can I get my team together to do something fun, to build camaraderie, you know, to blow up some steam. And I think get involved more in the community. And so not only is it a great fundraiser, but it's a really fun event to do as a business kind of looking for a team outing, like you just described, Eric. It's a lot of people use it for that. Yeah,
and I think just, you know, after the last 2 years, people are I don't mean to beat a dead horse on this podcast because we talk about it all the time, but over the last 2 years, I think people are really ready to get out and really ready to start going to these events a little bit more again, some that they maybe did in the past or didn't do in the past, just to, again, do something in a social setting that they might not have been able to do over the last couple of years.
So true.
Well, hey, we want to be respectful of your time, Heather. If there's any way, if you want any way to reach out to you guys, best way to get in touch with you in regards to, getting more information on becoming a big, what's the easiest way to contact you guys for that?
Yeah. So, thanks again for having me. I really appreciate doing this. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and so it's so fun to be on one. A lot of fun. But yeah, we are on a mission to make sure that every kid in our community has an opportunity to graduate high school with a plan for their future and a friend for a lifetime. So that is what this mission is all about. And if you're listening and you feel like that sounds like something you could get involved in any type of way, whether it's becoming a volunteer, coming to an event, joining our board, you can get a hold of us at bbbsil.org. My information is on the website, along with all of our team members. And if you are interested in volunteering, there's a lot more information there about eligibility and even a little application. You can start the application process.
Good. Well, again, we thank you for your time. We thank you coming on. You guys, again, are an amazing organization, and kudos to you guys for all that you do.
Thank you.
All righty.
Yeah, thanks, Heather.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Growing Belleville Through Community Chats podcast. Please remember to follow and subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends and community leaders. For additional information from this podcast, please reach out to the Greater Belleville Chamber of Commerce.